we need to get an email or an email, a newsletter, and also a Facebook page, a LinkedIn page. We need to have some SMS services, and we need to get PR. Oh, and we need to change the strategy. We need to go to TikTok as well. Does this sound to you? This everything we need to do. We need to do so many things. We need to change and go after the new shiny light object in the space. Do we actually need all of this, or we can go simple but effective? This is what we will talk about today with Roger Edwards about his book. So stay tuned because we will be here in a moment. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Special Marketing Live Show. Today will be a really special episode for me because maybe you may know it. I'm a marketing consultant. My background it's from marketing, and one of the things that it's really painful to me is seeing people talking about making 100 things on marketing. Sometimes they forget the customer. They talk about automations and and then your lead, and then it goes a funnel and everything, and we lose the essential. And today Roger Edwards will be here talking with me about his book Cat Mats and Marketing Plans. So let's bring it to the screen because he's at the basement. Welcome, Roger, and thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here.
Hi, Marco. Thanks very much for having me on your show. And I love your introduction. That rock music is right up my street. So I was nodding my head away to that.
Well, I think it's good to set this energetic music. For instance, I started another show a few days ago, and I played the intro music, and then when I started, I was dancing too. So this is something. I think it's good to set the mood. So, Roger, if you don't mind, I would love that you introduce yourself, and then we can start the conversation.
Well, I'm Roger Edwards. I describe myself as a marketing bloke from Edinburgh in the UK, the Scotland part of the UK. I've actually been involved in marketing throughout my entire career, and it's probably quite scary to think that I've been doing it for about between 25 and 30 years now. I just don't know where the time has gone. And I've worked in big corporates. I've worked in small startups, and pretty much for the last 10 years, I have been a marketing consultant, working with companies who predominantly want to keep marketing simple. I think during my big corporate days, I came across a lot of complexity, a massive amount of complexity, complexity that really created products and propositions which were far too complicated for customers. And eventually, to be perfectly honest, I got fed up with all of that and decided to leave big corporate, set myself up as a consultant to work with companies that wanted to keep things simple, knew that customer was the most important thing, and they wanted to focus on the customer. Other things about me, I'm originally from a place in the UK called Blackpool, which is a very famous seaside resort town. I have lived in Edinburgh in Scotland now for nearly 30 years. In fact, it will be 30 years in about 3 weeks' time. And yeah, I'm married, I have one son and one great big fluffy white cat.
Nice. Funny thing is that, it was 30 years ago already. I was close to you. I went to Lancaster
Ah,
um, because they have a kind of a partnership with my hometown.
uh-huh.
So they had there some sportive games. And back to those times, I was uh, an athlete, even though right now it's hard to tell, but yes, I was. And I I was close to you back to those times.
No, Lancaster, 20 miles up the road from Blackpool, where I started. I used to live for a while in a little town called Kendal, which is not far away from Lancaster. And when I was younger, there was a great big venue in Lancaster, which I've no idea whether it's still there. It was called the Sugar House at the time. It was predominantly a place that students went to, but they did have quite a lot of live bands in there. So yeah, anybody from Lancaster might be able to confirm whether the Sugar House still exists or whether it's now called something else.
Absolutely. And by the way, if you are from Lancaster, let us know if it's already there. So I've took some the eyes in your book, and thank you so much for sending it to me. And there was, because I'm an old school marketer too. I see myself as a old school marketer, because I believe that some people right now, they are putting things in a different way, and there's a nice thing in your approach that resonate a lot in what I believe, because right now people see, some people, well, I believe most of the people, they see marketing just as communication.
Yeah,
I believe this is a huge
yeah,
mistake. Your thoughts on this?
yeah. I mean, let's face it. You've already established the fact that you and I have been doing this for quite a while. 20 odd years. And sometimes people say to me, "Oh, Roger, you're getting too old for this. You're not in with the youngsters. You don't understand social media. You don't understand TikTok and all of this sort of thing." But what you actually have to understand is that the basic principles of marketing are absolutely the same now as they were 20 years ago, as they were 30 years ago. Yes, the technology that surrounds it changes day in, day out. All the stuff that we now have available digitally or on social or on email, yes, it's changing, and there are breakthroughs every day. And now everybody's talking about AI. And last year they were talking about the metaverse. And the year before that, they were talking about Bitcoin. And we have to embrace all of those things. And yes, as you get older, maybe it is a little bit harder to embrace the new technology, but the basic principles of marketing don't change. And I absolutely agree with you. A lot of the time today, when people talk about marketing, what they're really talking about is communication, or worse, they're just talking about advertising. Now, again, going back to marketing principles, the full marketing strategy, or the full marketing mix, as we used to call it in traditional terms, is known as the 4 Ps. You've got to have a product, you've got to have the price of the product, you've got to have the place that it's going to be sold, and you've got to have the promotion. Now, before you get to those 4 Ps, you've also got to know who your customers are. You've got to understand what their pain points are. You've got to understand what need it is that your product will end up solving. But a lot of the time today, Marco, I think, is people just talk about that 1P of promotion. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've perhaps not been as many marketing conferences over the last couple of years as I did before the COVID pandemic, same with everybody. But it's very rare, since digital became a big thing, that I would go to a conference and hear somebody talk about product development. It's very rare that I hear people talk about research. It's very rare I hear people talk about customer focus or positioning or targeting. And yet they will be talking about the latest app for social. They'll be talking about email. They'll be talking about advertising. They'll be talking about Google ads. They'll be talking about YouTube ads. And there's nothing wrong with all of those, but they are tactics
Absolutely.
of communication. And tactics rarely work unless you've got all the other stuff in place first. And it's almost become a bit of a crusade of mine to try to get people to remember that marketing is more than just the P of promotion or the C of communication, whatever you want to call it. And it's a lot more than that. And that was partly what prompted me to write the book. Now, admittedly, all of that I've just said, customer research, targeting, positioning, strategy, product, price, place, promotion, if you want to throw brand in as well, that starts to get a little bit complicated. And that's possibly why some people might shy away from it. So I had this almost dual mission with my book to say, let's make people understand that marketing isn't just about promotion, but let's also try to make them understand that it doesn't need to be complicated either.
Absolutely, absolutely. And by the way, finally, I got to go live on Amazon. So welcome Amazon as well. Don't forget to hit that follow button. We have already Joanna. Welcome, Joanna. It's so good to see you here. See you that you're there. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. And I wouldn't call it a provocative question because this is more a reflection. And I believe that you saw this as well lots of time because I saw it. And for instance, I saw this from people with some responsibilities
Mhm.
saying a good product doesn't need marketing. And this makes me blow my mind. Because let's face it, marketing mix, one of the piece is the product. So
Yeah.
your thoughts on this, Roger?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard this said as well. If your product's good enough, then people will just find it and buy it. And it's like we've already said, the P of promotion on its own isn't enough. You can't promote something if you don't know what the product is, if you can't articulate the product. And yes, if you launch a product to market and you're lucky enough that somebody sees it and maybe there's word of mouth starts off, you may be able to get a little bit of traction and start to sell. But it's all put together, isn't it? You need to have the product, you need to have a pricing strategy for that product, you need to know where it's going to appear. Is it an online product that appears on a website? Is it a physical product that appears on a shelf in a shop, or is it a physical product that appears in a warehouse and then gets distributed digitally? And again, we've already talked about customer targeting and this, that, and the other. It may well be that you could be lucky enough to get your product to fly just by building it and launching it and sitting and waiting for people to come through the door. But if you create the entire marketing mix of the price and the place and the promotion on whatever channels you have researched will work for your particular customer base, then you're going to give your product a much better chance of actually working. I mean, I know people who've opened cafes in Edinburgh. Now, Edinburgh is a very busy city. As you know, it's one of the most popular cities in the world, especially at this time of year. This summer, as we're heading into the summer, we have this thing called the festival in Edinburgh, and there's shows and there are comedians and there are things going on all over the place. But I know people who have opened cafes and they're sitting there with a completely empty cafe, not selling any coffee, not selling any food. And that's because nobody knows they're there. And the simple fact of going on to something like Instagram and starting to post out photographs of the cafe and post out photographs of the food will help start people finding that cafe. But more likely, if you advertise locally to build up a reputation, yes, you might then start to get customers. Word of mouth will start. But if you don't do any of the other parts of marketing and you just sit on your product, you could just be sat there in an empty shop waiting for people to find you, and they might not if you're down the wrong street or you're up the wrong alley, especially if it's a blind alley.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, um, we may think, okay, we have the right, we found something really that nobody has. This is a concept, because the concept is something that we hear all the time. The concept, we have a concept and it's amazing, and nobody, and also something that it's a buzzword by these days. We have an experience. And I like one of the things I like to say is the experience is there all the time since ever. You went to the barber shop 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and they asked you. It's the usual. This is an experience because you know that the barber knows what you usually have or wanna how you want to be your hair to be cutted. So uh, I believe again it's really important the thing about thinking about an experience, but all the time because it's always an experience. I like to say this all the time because you go to a gas to put gasoline, you have an experience. The thing is, are you working it or you're not working it? But the experience, it's there all the time. What do you think about this? Because sometimes okay, we kind of we don't think about the experience and all the touch points, for instance, because I like to talk about touch points because, for instance, you buy something online and then the product is perfect, the purchase process it's amazing, it's seamless, but then there's a delivery person that it's rude or doesn't come or the product doesn't come in good conditions, and we kind of ruin the whole process because of the last touch point, which was kind of not our responsibility.
Yeah, I guess that, I mean, experience, I think you've absolutely nailed that. It surrounds the products that we sell, doesn't it? It doesn't matter whether it's an electronic product that's easy to buy online, or again, it's something you go into a warehouse or a supermarket to buy. I mean, if I went back to my analogy of a cafe in Edinburgh, if that cafe had the best food and the best coffee, yet the waiter just insulted everybody who came through the door, and shouted at people, spat on people, or was grumpy with people, then they probably wouldn't get people coming back. They may get them in to try the food, but they said, you know what, the food's fantastic, but we just do not like that guy who runs it or his waiters. No, we're not going back there again. So you've got to build the experience into your product proposition, if you like. Now, again, sometimes if you get that balance, you've got your product, which we've talked about, you've got the price that people are prepared to pay, and then you've got the promotion that goes with it, and where you're buying it. Sometimes people will put up with a bad experience because they prefer a cheap price. Now, again, before the pandemic, I used to fly around Europe pretty much every week. And I don't know about you, but I found that the airport experience since the pandemic is even more stressful and horrible than it has been ever since I can remember it. And yet, people will fly with airlines like Ryanair because they can get flights from Edinburgh to Milan or to Mallorca or wherever it is. They can get them for ridiculously cheap prices. £20, £30 to fly 1,000 miles. That's amazing, isn't it? But we know that airlines like Ryanair aren't exactly rolling out the red carpet for you. They will cram you in. They will cram you into those planes. The seat pitch is really tight. If the flight gets delayed or cancelled, they don't particularly try to help you. But you could describe that as a miserable experience. But some people are happy to have that miserable experience because it gets them that 1,000 miles to a sunny destination, and they're prepared to put up with the miserable tight seats. But, if Ryanair was charging £1,000 to fly from Edinburgh to Milan or Edinburgh to Mallorca, I think you'd probably expect a little bit more room. You'd probably expect them to put you up into a hotel if things went wrong. You might expect them to give you a glass of champagne, whatever it is. But it's always a combination, isn't it, Marco? The product and the experience that goes with it and the price, those three things together create more than just an experience. It's the product itself and the experience that goes with it and the price that you pay.
Absolutely. And this comes with expectations. And there's something really important that you talk about in your book. And again, I need to come because I'm a little bit stubborn. This thing about the new marketing that some people they want to call this, and they kind of the thing is also I really don't like this kind of face to face the old marketing or traditional marketing and digital marketing like they were against and that's not the point. But one of the things that for me it's hard to swallow is this thing that calling for instance Gen Z like they were all the same Gen whatever, like they were kind of like ships that it's difficult to tell that it's the sheep Johnny and the other it's the sheep Mary. I don't believe this. So and also this thing of avatars, and one of the things that it's so simple but at the same time it's not so, how can I say, embraced, is that your customer it's real people.
Mm, mm.
Your thoughts on this, because I believe that it's important to remind people that your customer it's people, it's not a lead, it's not a prospect, it's not
No, I mean, there's quite a few things that I'd like to pick up on that you said there. The first thing is, again, yes, a lot of people argue digital marketing versus marketing as if, traditional marketing, by which they mean print and TV, I guess, as opposed to digital. I actually have a keynote speech that I do occasionally, which is almost, it's called "Dump the D Word," because marketing is marketing. Yes, perhaps we needed to call it digital marketing for a while because if you worked in a big company, you had to convince the board that yes, we needed to invest money in digital tactics and in digital technology to enable us to enact our marketing strategy. But be under no illusion, all the things we've talked about today still relevant. Digital is purely one of the means by which you deliver your product, one of the means by which you deliver your promotional message. There's no such thing as digital marketing as opposed to traditional marketing in anything other than the way that the tactics are delivered. The strategic elements of marketing remain the same. And yeah, maybe it is time for us to stop talking about digital marketing versus traditional marketing because it's really all the same. The other thing you said is okay, the customer, yes, it's very, very important. And again, to say we target Gen Z or Gen Z, as we would say in the UK, to say that we target Gen Z is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. You're talking about targeting an entire generation of people, millions and millions and millions and millions of people. Now, the stupid assumption, is that everybody within Gen Z is the same mindset and has the same desires and has the same goals and has the same needs. And that's not right. There are Gen Z people who might tune into this show and absolutely love your theme music because it's rock music and they're really into rock music. But there are other Gen Z people who will hate it because they're into drum and bass or dubstep and they like something completely different. There are Gen Z people who earn higher salaries than other Gen Z people. There are Gen Z people who are married, and there is Gen Z people who aren't married. There are Gen Z people who have children who don't have children. There are Gen Z who have houses that they've bought. Some have mortgages, some haven't, some rent. Everybody is different, and you have to talk to your specific customer, and you need to know who those customers are. Now, it could be that you're targeting, again, I keep going back to this analogy of the cafe, but if you have a cafe in Edinburgh, you'll predominantly be targeting Edinburgh residents plus tourists that are coming and staying close by to your cafe. How can I talk to that particular segment of my target audience? So, yeah, you might say our customers are predominantly Gen Z, but you need to segment Gen Z down into much smaller segments and work out which of those segments are actually your customers. Do they like rock music or not? If you're selling rock music, do they like red cars or do they like blue cars or whatever it is? You've got to understand a target market within that cohort. And let's use another airline analogy. There was a didn't Air France try to set up an airline recently, or it was probably more about 5 years ago now, and I don't think they particularly they weren't targeting Gen Z. I think they were going after Gen X, millennials, and the airline was called Juno. I think it was called Juno, and they made this big thing about this is all about millennials, blah 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 blah. And I think after a year, they had to fold it very quietly back into Air France because it completely didn't work. It didn't appeal because, again, they were trying to appeal to everybody they thought within this generation. And they forgot we actually have to target it at specific people. And they didn't. They just tried to appeal to everybody, broad brush. And in the end, they thought this isn't working. Fold it back into Air France. That was a mistake. So yeah, you've got to understand your customer, and it might be a very narrow set of customers if you're going for a high-end product with a very high price tag and a very luxury experience surrounding it, or it could be a bigger segment if it's a smaller product with a cheaper price and a maybe less important experience. But yeah, let's be specific about who our customers are. And one of the lines from the book, it's right early on in the book, is marketing is a deep, almost obsessive understanding of your customers. You can't understand the needs and wants of an entire generation, but you can understand the needs and wants of a narrow segment that you've defined as your customer base.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And about the customer, you have an amazing example on your book. And of course, I don't want to talk about the whole process, but I believe that, and I'm talking about that insurance situation, because I think this comes in a I don't know, maybe a second step in the ladder, or maybe, yes, I think it's the second step, because I like to say one of the things, one of the jobs marketing has around 3 4 steps. One is to get the first customer, then it's to keep it, then
Mhm.
it's to make it to buy again, and then it's to turn it into an evangelist. And the thing is, and sometimes I believe that this is something that maybe people from digital marketing needs to sit and reflect, because they talk too much about customer acquisition, and they I don't listen to them talking too much about keeping customers and loyalty and all these things. And so the example I'm talking on your book is that a lady from insurance, uh, a customer from an insurance company had this situation, and at some point, the company refused to pay because she had uh, a illness, and didn't mention at the beginning, once she applied, that she had some issues, and then the company refused to pay the
The claim.
indemnization. So
Yeah.
there's two questions here to talk about, because I believe, and in these days, these situations, they are even more critical. One is how easy or how hard it is to understand he or she has a reason, we won't pay, or about and the other thing, which is even more important back to these days, which is the PR. Like, which image will people have from our company? Because we kind of, but my father used to say something: sometimes we win losing and we lose winning.
Yes. Yes.
Your thoughts on
Yes.
this, Roger? Because you live
Yes.
this really close, I
Yeah, I
believe.
mean, this is indelibly, sort of, burned into my brain because, and it happened quite early. It happened quite early in my career. This was around about 1999, 1990. Yeah, 1999, and this company I worked for had turned down this claim for this lady, and she was very upset, as you would expect, and she went to a TV program in the UK, which at the time it was called We Can Work It Out. It's very similar to a program we still have called Watchdog, and they did a program about this lady and about the fact that the company I worked for had effectively been very mean to her, and my company decided that I would be the person to go on TV to argue why we were right and she was wrong. And of course, I went in with all the answers, as you would expect. Almost, you can see reflections of current politics. I had all the three-word slogans like "You've got to tell the truth" and "You've got to give the correct answers to the questions when you apply." But I remember sitting in that TV studio with these great big lights shining in my face, and I realized, this up until this moment, everybody in my company has seen this person not as an individual lady, but as a number. She was a number with a file, and we didn't really try to understand her circumstances. We just felt we can't give her money because she answered a question in wrongly, as we thought. After that TV program, I went back, and there was a big investigation within the company, and it turned out that it was not her fault. It never was, and she had her money in the end. She got paid, and I went to visit the lady with the CEO of the company, the big boss, and this was still one of the biggest moments of my career. We went to her house. Funnily enough, she lived just a bit north of Edinburgh. And this was in the winter, so it was, if I remember, it had been snowing. There was snow on the ground. And when we got to her house, she actually was very, very welcoming. She welcomed us into her house. And she could have been quite grumpy with us because of what had happened, but she was welcoming. We went into the house. There was the smell of bread baking in the oven. There was coffee on the stove. I could smell the coffee. I remember there was a gigantic ginger cat lying in front of a fire. And right at that moment, I thought, this is a real lady with a house, with a cat, with baking bread in the oven, with coffee on the stove. And she's a nice lady, and she's invited us into our home, and we're sat in her home, and it's warm in here and it's cold outside. Except up until today, to us, she'd been policy number 15657G or whatever it was. And right after that moment, I realized this is you've got to look at the customer, and you've got to understand them, and you've got to talk to them at all points throughout their experience, or whatever you want to call it, journey. I hate journey, but your interaction with the company. And ever since then, I've used that as an example. Now, if I find myself in a position where the company that I'm working for wants to do something to a customer, which would mean that I would have to go on TV to defend it again, then probably we're not doing the right thing. And you've got to have a very close look at it, because, as you say, that was bad PR. That was bad PR. And the company took a long time to recover from that. Because quite rightly, people thought, well, if they can do that to her, they'll do it to us. And I remember my father being very upset because I was the one on TV. I was the one who was being shouted at by the journalist. And he says, but it's not your fault. It's not your fault individual. And I said, well, yeah, you've got to understand it's the company, but etc. So ever since then, it's been right in my head. You've got to look at the customer as an individual. And one of the problems we have with digital today, I think, Marco, as you've said, is that we often just see the customer as a number of likes or a number of subscribes or a number added to the database. And databases don't have feelings. Data in a database doesn't own a house. Data in a database doesn't have a cat sat in front of a fire and doesn't have bread baking in the oven. But real people have potentially all of those things. And we need to remember to focus on the real people, because otherwise, to sort of answer the rest of your question, you will end up getting into bad PR situations. And I know some people say there's no such thing as bad publicity. All publicity is good publicity. But no, there is bad publicity. And yes, you
Absolutely.
might recover from it, but you shouldn't put yourself in that situation in the first place.
I'm a true believer on that as well. And sometimes we listen, oh, while they are talking about us, this is, and I say, okay, it's good to be talked about. But the thing is, I'd rather be talked in a positive way instead of a negative way. So
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And I was thinking about something else because, for instance, and we have also this dictatorship, and you kind of talked about it, the statistics, because and let me share this because a few months ago I went, after the COVID thing, I went to my first uh, offline congress, and they were talking about metrics. And I believe, yes, I believe that it's good to look at metrics. The thing is, they don't tell you the whole story. And the thing is, most of the things, the good things, they are not seen in metrics. And so they were talking about this TikTok average viewership and average seconds. And they were saying, oh, so people, they are watching just 12 seconds of our videos on TikTok. So this means that we need to make shorter videos. And I thought, no, you need to make better videos. But the thing is, and as you mentioned, we are talking to real people. And yes, of course, sometimes there are people that they look at our video, they look at our blog post, and they read a couple of lines, they see a couple of seconds. But I believe that people is not our customer. I believe that even if it's one which will look the whole video, which will read the whole blog post or whatever, that person probably will get the trust to ask us for um, a quotation to buy the product wherever. What do you think about this? I don't know how to call it, this craziness about metrics. And the thing is, and I like to, even though of course this it's important. Don't get me wrong, please. It's important to look at metrics, but there's a saying by Henry Ford that if I ask people what they wanted, they would say a faster horse.
Yep.
So, how do you think we can balance this about metrics, listening to the customers, and finding the sweet spot in the betweens of all of this?
Yeah, I think metrics is obviously important. We do have to measure things, but I do sometimes think that it's possible to get yourself into a situation where you're constantly measuring, but you're not actually interacting. Um, a lot of the times these days, you'll go to stay in a hotel or you'll you'll fly on an airline or whatever. All the examples we've used today, and before you even get out of the door of the hotel or you get off the plane, you'll have an email in your inbox saying, "Please just fill out these few questions about your experience," and it'll say, "Rate check-in 1 to 10." Rate the cleanliness of your room 1 to 10, blah, blah, blah. And yet, tick, 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 and you've given them a load of metrics. But very rarely do they actually give you a box where you can just tell them how you feel. Or they very rarely do they ask you, how do you feel? So rather than rate check-in 1 to 10, tell us how you feel about check-in. Tell us how you feel about the cleanliness of your room. Because if somebody ticks the box and says the room was dirty, Well, okay, that's a bad metric. But you might ask them a question and how did it make you feel? Well, I've been on the road for a long time. Hadn't had a shower for, haven't had a shower for 3 days because my flight was late, and I've been running around. And I got into the hotel room, and there was a squashed bug in the bath, and that was it. But it was the end of my day. So you got a bad mark. Now you understand the reasoning behind the metric, but if you only had the metric to go on, you wouldn't have the full story. And I think that you do have to find that balance between becoming paralyzed by the analysis paralysis of the metrics, and having that deep, almost obsessive understanding of the customer. And I don't believe you can have a deep understanding of the customer just by data points. You have to understand the thoughts and the feelings of the individuals, and I think that's how you differentiate yourself from that. And a lot of that, again, is going back to how you target people and how you understand who your customers are. And you also said, let's make videos that are 12 seconds long. Well, um, I, how often have you binged watch a box set on Netflix or Amazon? My wife and I came across a crime thriller not so long ago called Bosch on Amazon Prime. There are 8 series of Bosch with 10 episodes in each series. And we liked it so much, we pretty much watched it nightly until we ran out of episodes. And now we want more Bosch. And fortunately, there's going to be a new series in the summer, I believe. Now, if we hadn't enjoyed that first episode, we probably wouldn't have watched it again. But there are people who will watch 12 seconds of a Bosch episode, and there are people who will watch 80 episodes back to back. But you have to know who those people are and how to appeal to them. And it comes back to what we said before. We need to talk to them, and we need to understand the metrics. But if you just paralyze yourself with analysis of the metrics, I don't think you'll get that proper understanding of the customer.
Absolutely. And about that last thing you mentioned, Roger, I'm a crazy about this because I've been a long-term content lover since the beginning. And the thing is, you were talking, and again, yes, it's true. For instance, this year I went to the movies to see the most acknowledged movies, The Whale and Everything Everywhere or whatever. And the shorter video was 1 hour and 50 minutes. I wouldn't think that a movie director and a movie producer would say, okay, we need to make a movie, an amazing movie, but it has to last 10 seconds because it's the attention span of people. Or on the other side, and I went to YouTube to check, Bohemian Rhapsody lasts 6 minutes. I believe that Queen, if they had to write this song how could we write this song to last only 8 seconds? Because attention span is just this.
I mean, this whole idea that content has to be short is, I'm going to use an English word here, it's bollocks. It's complete bollocks. It depends upon the audience again, and maybe it's a marketing people's thing. We'll argue, oh, we need to make our content shorter. It's not because people don't like what we're doing or it's too long. It's just that what we're doing is rubbish to that particular audience. They don't want it. They're not consuming it. So if you understand the customer, then you can create something that they will want to watch, they will want to read, they will want to listen to. Um, there are again, marketing people will tell you, if you put a video on YouTube, let's forget TikTok for a moment, because that is definitely short form. But if you put a video on YouTube, the marketing wisdom is that it shouldn't be more than 2 or 3 minutes long. But again, your show here, we've been going for 46 minutes now. You
Yes.
understand that your audience is looking for quite a deep conversation, and they're quite happy to have a guest that will tell stories and will interact and have a conversation with you. You couldn't do that in 10 seconds. It'd be a pretty quick show. We'd have time for the theme music and then that's it. So again, it's all coming back to who your audience is. I do a lot of work on YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's a particular guy who does reviews of theme parks, like Six Flags theme parks in America and Blackpool Pleasure Beach and Alton Towers in the UK and things like that. And his videos are sometimes 90 minutes long. He walks around the whole park, films everything, and reviews every shop and every ride and every roundabout and every ghost train. And yet he's getting 38,000, 40,000 views per episode. Now, that's because there are lots of people who like theme parks and they will watch his videos, whether they're 10 minutes long or 90 minutes long. If you don't like theme parks and you've got no intention of visiting them ever, you'll probably not watch his videos. Or if you do, you'll accidentally watch the first 10 seconds. Now, he's not going to say, oh my goodness, that person only watched 10 seconds of my video. I'm going to make my videos 10 seconds from now on. I'm embellishing this a bit, but you know what I mean.
9.5. And this will take us to another question that it's important by these days, because we hear this all the time. Things are changing fast. How can I set a strategy with things changing so fast? Oh, we have a new social media. We need to be there. Let's go to Clubhouse. And suddenly Clubhouse goes away. How do you think we should manage all this craziness? Of course, because we need to think about them. We need to think, okay, there's new arrivals, things change. They obviously change, but at the same time, if we think about strategy, we can't be changing it all the time.
No, I mean, let's be perfectly honest here, Marco. You're probably the same as me. When a new piece of kit comes along, a new social media platform, I love to dive in and have a look. I have that new toy syndrome. I have that. Oh, let's see how can I use this to get more customers. And I think that's a trap that all marketing people fall into. What we have to do is just make sure that we've got the basis of the strategy in place. So if we know who our customers are, and we know what their problem is, and we know how our product or our service solves their problem, we know how much we're charging for it, and we know at the moment where they hang out in terms of places on social media, or where we can communicate them either with our advertising or with our content, then that's your basis, that's your strategy. And yes, of course, things will change, but the tactics end of it is where you'll just need to tweak it slightly. So along comes Clubhouse, fine. We're going to check out and see whether our customers, because we know who they are they going to be interested in Clubhouse? Are they appearing in Clubhouse? Then maybe we need to be in Clubhouse. But if they're not, and we understand them, don't we? Because we've got this obsessive understanding of them. If they're not in Clubhouse, then we don't need to be in Clubhouse. However much we love Clubhouse and how much we want to be in it, it's not going to help us. And the same with TikTok. There are companies out there who will be selling products to certain segments of society who are never going to be on TikTok. So you don't need to be on TikTok unless you particularly want to be personally. But from a corporate point of view, you don't need to be there. However, because you understand who that customer is, how they're buying, what their needs are, etc., if it's likely that they are going to start being on TikTok, then yes, maybe you have to think about tactically putting some effort into talking to your customers on TikTok. But you've also got to balance it out. You can't be everywhere all at once unless you've got multi-million pound, whatever budgets. So I think that as long as you've got the strategy and you understand all of that, and then you give yourself a bit of flexibility around the tactics, then you can adapt to what's happening now. But don't go back and change your entire customer base and your entire product set just because um, a new social media platform comes along and might only work for the next 6 months. Um, yes, we us marketers do have to watch out for all this toy hype. I mean, I always have a laugh that 3 years ago people were going on about crypto. You could buy so and so's crypto course for $97. Then the year after that, it was Web3. The same person reinvents himself as a Web3 consultant and starts selling courses for $97. Then last year it was Metaverse, which I know is sort of the same basis as Web3. And now, of course, everybody's talking about AI and Chat GTP and all of that sort of thing. And yes, no doubt we will all embrace Chat GTP and other AI as it comes along. But there's also a massive danger that we may just create some masses of mediocre content just because we think we have to dive in and use this new tool without really understanding how it can help our customers. So again, have your strategy, understand it, and then adapt the tactics as the technology changes. And if you do that, I think you'll probably manage to navigate your way through it all.
Yes, yes. And you mentioned something that it's for me it's crucial. It's listening and watching to your customers, because again we tend to, okay, we know everything, we just look at metrics and all these sort of things, and we know everything. I think, Roger, one of the problems, I think this is one of the biggest problems that we marketers we suffer. It's our ego. Because yes, because we need to see, we need to show that we can sell to everyone, that we are successful. And for instance, there's this thing, I want to sell a course, and my course is oriented to results. You should, because my uh, students, they are getting millions. How do you prove it? You can't, but they are selling millions. And I believe that. Do you think? Don't you think that this is a problem that we, as a whole, because another thing about marketers is that, and in these days, this is even more crucial. We have this exposure that most of the professionals don't have, because we need to. And I said this back to 2 or 3 months ago. I went to the the university I studied. They asked me to go there. They invited me to, and I said one of the problems, or one of the things I don't accept, that a marketing student, or um, a marketing graduate goes and says, nobody gives me an opportunity. And I ask them, look, what if you were a marketing manager, and then the owner of the company, the CEO, whatever, comes to you uh, asking for results, and you just reply, our customers don't give us an opportunity. So, so the thing is, we live, it's important as marketing professionals, this exposure, like, to prove that actually we are good. If we are good selling ourselves, probably we are good selling uh, other things. This is something, a simplistic uh, reflection. Don't you think that this could be one of the problems? Like, okay, I want to show that I want to look smart by showing that you need to make shorter videos. I want to look wise because uh, I'm selling big amounts of things, even though, for instance, there's people don't buy again, because this is something that I would love to know as well, even though I know I won't know this. Don't you think this could be a problem?
Yeah, I think This is a concept. I mention it in the book, but I didn't spot this trend. There's a marketing guy. I don't know. He may have been on your show or not. He's called Mark Ritson, and he writes a column for Marketing Week in the UK every month or so. And I mention him in the book because he calls this phenomenon marketing orientation. And the bottom line is that us marketers often superimpose our own desires onto those of our customers. In other words, what he's saying is we think that we think like our customers. So a basic example could be that if I buy a new car, I'm likely to buy a red car, or I'm likely to be attracted to a red car because I like red cars. And therefore, in my mind, if I was to sell cars to my customers, I probably would feel that most of my customers should buy red cars. But that's so stupid, isn't it? Because there are people out there who like blue cars and grey cars and white cars and silver cars and black cars and whatever it is. But marketers do that. We superimpose our desires and thoughts over those of our potential customers. But we are not our customers. We are the marketers. Our customers are people we need to talk to and we need to understand. And if you do that, if you superimpose your own views over those of your customers, then you're not going to engage with them. Because I like watching 90-minute theme park videos means that I would assume that everybody would, but of course we know that's not the case. And it goes back to the 10-minute TikToks as well, or binge watching 80 episodes of Bosch, or buying a croissant instead of a pain au chocolat. I can't assume that all my customers like the same things as me. And that's why we have to research what our customers want. That's why we have to talk to them. That's why we have to understand them. If I sit in my ivory tower and think, well, my customers are just the same as me, then I'll get it wrong spectacularly. I will spectacularly get it wrong. And I actually think that if you look at a lot of companies, that is possibly what is happening. And especially, we talked about, I mean, I do quite a lot of work in the financial services industry. And one of the reasons why financial services never really appeals to younger people, never really appeals to Gen Z, is because a lot of the people who run financial services companies are in their 40s and 50s. And they may think that young people like the same things as they do, or young people react to the same messages, but they don't. But they're not getting out there and talking to the young people to understand how to engage with them. And that's because they've got this problem of marketing orientation. They're thinking that they are thinking the same as the customer. And when you've got an age gap that could be 20 or 30 years, that's clearly spectacularly wrong.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are just about to reach the end, so I need to ask I need to ask you three reasons, because I don't like to put things in like the secret sauce, because I think it's too short. Once people asked me, if you want to share a secret with us, which secret would be? And my secret was never ask just one secret, because it's not enough. There's no just one secret. So I think three, it's a nice number. If you don't mind, three reasons to get your book.
I think that ultimately you need a marketing strategy in order to use all these fabulous digital tools that we've got at our disposal today. And let's face it, if you go out there and search for a book about marketing strategy or a course about marketing strategy, it can look quite daunting. So I wrote the book from the point of view that I know there are a lot of people out there who find the whole marketing concept quite complicated, maybe even quite scary. But there are a lot of people out there who perhaps don't have marketing backgrounds, but find themselves working in a company and doing marketing. Maybe they just got into doing it by accident, or they were asked to do it after they arrived. And the book's really for people like that. You don't have to have a marketing background, and therefore I've explained everything in a very simple way. Now, that's not to say that if you do have a marketing background and you understand all about the 4Ps and strategy and um, positioning and segmentation and all that, that you might not learn how to simplify things by reading the book. But I've really written it for people who find themselves doing marketing, but they haven't really got the marketing background. And for that reason, I keep it very, very simple. So I try to eliminate jargon. I'm not talking about all the jargon that marketing people use or corporate people use. It's very simple, easy to follow, and easy to understand. And there's no hype in there. I guess that the one secret that I would perhaps say is, in order to get that deep, almost obsessive understanding of the customer, is you've always got to ask questions of your customers at every stage, whether it's before you've launched your product, whether it's during the launch of your product, or whether it's after. And ask them questions and go deeper. So do you always remember when I was younger, when I was a child, and I would come home from school and I'd say to my mum, "Can I have a Mars bar? Can I have some chocolate?" Mum would says, "No, you can't have some chocolate." And I'd say, "Why?" And she says, "Well, your dinner's going to be ready in half an hour." "Well, I'm hungry now. I'd like some chocolate now." "Well, it'll ruin your dinner if you have chocolate now." And I'd say, "Why will it do that?" And it's never the question is never finished just at the first answer. So ask your customer, "Why do you like red cars?" And they'll give you an answer, and then so probe deeper. What is it? Until you get that genuine, why do you like red cars? They give you an answer. Why about the answer that you've given? And if you do that, you get deeper and you understand more, and you get the feel and you get the real person behind the answers. So I think that good questions can always reveal so much more than data ever will, even though you need data to back up some of the answers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Roger. Where can people find you?
Okay. So probably the best place to find me, and I almost regret saying this at the moment, but I'm on Twitter, Roger_Edwards on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. Most people are on LinkedIn. I am on Instagram as well. I do have a YouTube channel. It's called Roger Edwards TV. I do the occasional marketing video, but I've been doing quite a lot of just vlogs recently. Personally, because I like doing them and I started doing them during the pandemic. But if you want to connect with me for business reasons, then find me on Twitter or go to my website, which is rogeredwards.co.uk.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Roger. It was a really good, insightful conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. By the way, if you will be releasing a book, just let me know and I will bring you back. It will be a pleasure.
I have been thinking about a second edition of Cats, Mats, and Marketing Plans, just to sort of encompass some of the things that we've been talking about today, like the AI, metaverse, and I wrote the book before the pandemic. It was published during the pandemic. So there's a lot of things have changed in the way people buy now and the way that people interact now. So I probably either need to write a different book or update this one. But the basic principles of marketing never change. Therefore, the basic principles that are currently in the book are still absolutely spot on.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Roger. Thank you so much to you as well. And I will be live tomorrow again. So don't forget to tune in. Bye bye. See you soon.